Hey there. I'm gonna start in a bit. Alright. Check. So if you're watching right now, head over to joshbess.net/live and you'll be able to join the live chat. I'll jump on camera for a second. Hey everybody, Josh Bess here. If you're watching right now, head over to joshbess.net/live and you'll be able to enter the chat room below. See you in a bit. Right. Alright. Hey everybody, Josh Bess here. Welcome to the stream. I don't think anybody's on right now, but I'm gonna stream anyway. I'm gonna create this video for you guys. I'll keep this on YouTube, so if you want to watch it later, you can enjoy that. What I'm going to do right now is sample a tune because I want to use this guy, Innovation Circuit. Basically, this is a 2-voice synthesizer, and it has these slots over here for 4 different drum pads, drum samples that I can use. And what I want to do in this video is take this song, Marc Spence on Air. The drums are awesome in the intro, and the whole song is really cool. So what I want to do is chop it up, throw it onto this, so then I could create a song with this later on. So that's what I'll be doing in the Ableton session right now. If anybody joins the stream, join the chat room and joshbest.net/live. You can join the chat over there. If you have any thoughts or questions, let me know. If you're catching this later, enjoy this video. Alright. So basically this thing has 4 drum pads. So what I want to do is basically create 4 different samples. I could show you what I already did, and just for video purposes, I'll probably just do it again, and I'll show you guys how I did it. So this is the song. And what I want to do is simply take the drums out of that. I want to kick a snare, maybe hi-hat, and the vocal. Are we on the air? I like that sub bass. I could actually create that with Innovation Circuit, so I'll do that. The main thing is this though. That would be better off as a sample, but I probably could create something like that on Circuit as well. That's really the main thing, and this is what I got from it already. So this was the sample that I took, and I ended up turning that into just a kick. You can see I did some EQing, I threw a little bit of reverb on it, I stretched it out a little bit in audio, and then I faded it out. And you would really never even notice it was from this song at this point, you know? It's like a nice kick you could work with. Over here was like a little kick on the upbeat. So together you get these two. Got a little hi-hat. snare. See this? I took out a lot of the low end, because when you play it together with the kick, it sounds pretty good. So this is my sampled version of this. This is the original. I think it turned out pretty good. I got a pretty good sample out of it. So, let's see. I could do it again just to show you. Basically, I have this kick. Let's see, I'm going to try to do it again. I'm going to create a new track. I'm going to call this new kick sample. And people watching this right now might be saying, why are you taking his kick? Why are you sampling other people's music? Honestly, if you listen to almost any song you're listening to now, something was sampled from somewhere, you know. I like creating my own kicks as well, but doing this is fun too. And even if you do this, it doesn't have to be solely for taking somebody's kick, you know. This sound could be used for something else in the future. It might not even be a kick. It's like if I stretch it out, I could turn it into some type of percussion or something. You can do a lot with this, or even add this to a different kick as like more of like a punch or something. So there's definitely a lot that you can do with it. So I'm going to take this kick and drop it in here. Let's see what this sounds like. So you can see that I have this hi-hat over here. So I definitely don't want that. Command E, get rid of that. It's already kind of there, but you could hear there's this little high frequency in the top. You could see in this track I took the EQ8. I'll take that same EQ8 and copied it over. If I boost this frequency, you can see as I move this around, you can even see right around here where my mouse is, there's a little peak. And that's exactly what I was hearing. And I didn't want that. It sounded like it was coming from the hi-hat or something. So if I simply take that out, you can see that the original one was stretched out a little bit because I didn't want it to cut off so drastically. I wanted it to fade out a little bit. So what I could do is stretch the audio a bit. So I'm going to go to my fades. I'm going to make sure I take off the fade at the beginning because I don't want it to fade out at all. And what I did do here, I usually don't do what I did in this first one. See how I stopped it right at the beginning? What I like to do is give myself a little bit of space before it, even if it's like 128th note. It's like this little tail. You can see that little tiny pop over here adds so much power to it. It's such a small thing. I'll show you. You might hear it, you might not hear it. Let's see. With the fade, you definitely hear it. Say I drag it out a little bit. It definitely sounds different. I'm getting a little bit of a deeper tone from it for some reason. But you definitely get a little more of a pop from that little tiny transient over here. So what I usually do is set it to about 256. No, I usually do like 128's enough. Okay. That was weird. My grids disappeared for a second. They just came back. I'm going to do 128. No, that's too much. 256. Okay. So I got that kick. And what I want to do is consolidate this. And just so I know this is starting 256 before, I'm going to write kick 256. This is, I'm going to show you why I do this. I'm going to consolidate this with Command J. And now I know whenever I'm dragging a kick in, I'm not going to bring it to the beginning. I know down here this says 256. I know that if I want this start to kick on the downbeat, I have to move this 256 before the beat. So even if I have this fade, it's okay because it's not going to hit. It's not going to get rid of that fade on the downbeat. So helpful thing. That's what I do. Now the end, I'm going to stretch it a little bit. I don't want to stretch the actual kick too much though, you know. I kind of like the sound of the kick, so I just want to stretch it a little bit. Let's see what it sounds like. You can hear, now I'm getting too much of a, like a wavy tone at the end of it. Let's see what happens if I put it to complex. I don't really like the way that sounds. Usually beats is better for drums. When you're warping out drums, it keeps that hard transient at the beginning. So what I could do is actually fade this out. Let's see. It might not be as long as my first one. What I might do is consolidate it again. I consolidate it. And I'll take that little end piece off over here and fade that out. And I got a new kick. Sounds pretty good. I'm going to put some reverb on it. Reverb on a kick, I don't always advise it because you don't always want, you know, like a big roomy sound on your kick. But there's a few reasons why I want to do it right now. I like the idea that this kick sounds a little natural. It has like a natural acoustic sound to it. So adding reverb on it gives it this natural room kind of sound. If you add a lot of wetness to it, it's going to take it out of the front of the mix. It's going to put it into the back a little bit. So you just want a little bit to give it some room sound. What it also does is help you like fit that tail in a little bit. So it could be like a little. It's just like a little burst of air. It's not this like long reverb tail, but it definitely helps it feel a little bit more natural, especially because you're cutting it off at the end. It gives it this little like push of air. So I love doing this kind of stuff. So definitely helpful for kick. It's good for any percussion really, but for kicks especially, when you get that little burst of air, it's very helpful. This is a big thing too. People always add, so you have a kick. Most of the time you see on like the Nicky Romero kick plugin, for example, they'll have this kick. It's like a sine wave 808 kind of thing. But at the beginning they add this click sound. And that click is really helpful for adding the punch of the actual sound, where it's like something that kind of hits you in the chest. Or like the whole drum hits you in the chest, this one like gives you a little pop, that frequency at the beginning. Where the end of it, if you get that little burst of air, it makes it sound so natural. It's this odd thing that we don't really hear, but we feel in a way. And it's really good on synths and pretty much any instrument as well. So I always add a little bit of reverb if I can. So that's my new kick. Let's see what this one sounds like. This one has a little higher tone to it. It's probably because of the way I warped it. You can see this one was warped a little farther, the original one. So it has like a lower kick. This one's a little bit higher, which is kind of cool. If I want to use both of these now, it might actually make my song sound a little bit more natural. Like if I'm using a kick drum and two of them sound a little bit different, even if I could alternate them, I could create these different patterns with these different kicks, which is helpful. So I got those two. Let's check the stream. All right. So for anybody that swings into this, once again, if you go to joshbess.net/live, you can enter the chat room below. And if you have any thoughts or questions, let me know. I'll answer them on camera. I'll talk about them. For now, I'll simply continue this, and I'll go through all these different samples. The kick number 2, that was, I don't think it's in this original loop, but this one. Boom, 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 boom. You can hear it's not the original kick. If I take this kick over here, for example, and I simply duplicate it, see, I want to go to like a like, it sounds too robotic. I don't really like the way that sounds. But if I have simply, let's see, this, I got 256. If I add this kick over here, this one's a little different. It's kind of like a, it sounds like an 808. Well, this one's like an acoustic kick. This one's like a little 808 kick. And together, it's kind of like you have a kick and a tom. It's just two different sounds, you know. It doesn't sound like this robotic thing. So what I did was simply go in there and I took it out and moved it in there. It was very simple to this one over here. I could do that one again. Why not? New kick sample. New kick 2 sample. Let's see. Oh, so actually this one, you could hear, there's this one hit that happens over here, but there's a lot of stuff going on, so I wouldn't really be able to get a long sample. What I wanted to find was like the longest version and the cleanest one I could really feel. And I think it was right over here. There is a hi-hat in there. So, but I think this one's a little better. This one's cleaner, but has a hi-hat at the same time. This one's smaller, but there's no hi-hat, so it's a little easier to use. So I'm not even gonna find the exact spot. I'm just gonna highlight this, and I'm gonna paste this over here. And I know somewhere in here there's a kick 2 sample I can use. I think it's right over here. So what I'm gonna do is go into the actual wave down here. I like doing this. So warping is not on, warping's off. And what I can do is simply drag this up to the start of this hit. I don't really want it to pop, so you can see down here there's this horizontal line. If I find the sample right where that horizontal line is, so like where the wave could, what's it called, intersects with the horizontal line, I'm not going to get any pop. If you want to pop, basically the farther away you go from that line, the harder your pop is going to be. So I don't want to pop right now, I just want a clean sound, so I'm going to do that. And the end of it, I'm going to do the same thing. I want to find a spot where this is not going to pop. I also want to take this same sound. So like this one hit, you can see over here, in this area is where the next sound is starting. So I want to find a good place where it intersects the line, so I know there's no sound. There's going to be no pop at all. And I want it to be right before the wave actually changes shape. Where the wave changes shape, you know that's a different sound. So I want to keep the same sound. This like, it's kind of like a sine wave. It's very like kick drum type of sound, 808. And from here you can see this is the sample that I have. It's basically this. Here's a trick also. Right now I'm hitting the spacebar. And I have to hit the spacebar twice to play and stop the session. If I hold the Option key or Alt on my keyboard, whenever I hit spacebar, it plays. So, like as you're editing, you can really go in there and listen to it easily. I'm holding Option and just hitting space. So that's my sample. See this? Oh. Ooh, I just found a trick. I found a trick live. So when you're holding Option and you hit spacebar, I had a feeling something would happen when I hit Option as I was dragging this. You can see my cursor now is only moving the end. But when I hold Option, that cursor changes to a different shape. And now it's actually moving the whole entire sample. So when you're holding Option, instead of dragging the end, it actually moves the whole thing. I just learned something new. What up, Ableton hotkeys? So I actually have to go in there and fix that. I'll go in here. Now, sweet. Actually, this is super helpful because now whenever I'm finding new sounds, I could simply move this over. I'm really happy. I had no idea I could do that. Learning new things every day. Alright. So that's the sound. What did I do in this one? Same thing. I took out that higher frequency. I added a little bit of reverb in there. I might not even want, because it's this like quick 808, I don't really want this natural sound to it. So I'll add a little tiny bit, but not much. But those are the two samples. I got this kick, and I got this little 808 kind of thing. I'm going to do this. I'll create a little loop on a 16th note triplet, maybe? No. Do a 32nd note. Or just 16th note. Alright, then the snare. So the snare, all I really did was take the kick drum again, but I took the kick with the snare because I don't think a snare happened throughout this song without the kick. So I did a very similar thing that I did to the kick. So I'll create new snare sample. I'll take this snare and this is the most important thing about the snare. It does have some frequencies in there that are mixing with the kick. So you really want to make sure that these are in phase with each other. Meaning, if, for example, this is just a small example. If you're playing the same exact sound, but they're slightly out of phase from each other, you could create some weird effects. So I'm going to listen to this. I'm going to bring this on the beat, and I'm going to slowly drag it off, and we'll listen to what happens. Like right now, you're hearing some phase issues. They're playing at the same time, but they're slightly off, and you're actually losing a lot of the depth and the punch and the whole body of the sample. The reason for that is when you have a sample playing, I'll show you something. This is an interesting thing to see. Let's see. Let's do a little phase. We'll do a little phase thing. Okay, I have this kick. Okay, I'm gonna freeze and flatten this, so there's no audio effects on it. Flatten. Okay. So this is my kick. Now I'm gonna duplicate this kick, and I'm going to throw a utility on it. I'm going to flip the phase. Now I'm gonna freeze and flatten it. And you can see that the waves are exactly the same, but they're flipped from each other. So this is kick 1, kick, what do you say, phase, flip. This is the other one. You hear they pretty much sound the same. But when I play them both at the same time, I'm playing it back, but you don't hear anything. The reason for this is when you have two waves that are exactly opposite from each other, you have one going up and you have one going down, they actually cancel each other out, so you don't hear anything. So if you have a snare sample and this kick sample, if you have some waves that are exactly the same but they're out of phase, it means that some sounds will be canceling each other out a little bit. And that's the reason why you lose some of that body from those samples. If you have two playing at the same time but they're slightly off, you could be getting some phase issues. And of course for drums you don't want that, because then you'll have this punchy sound, but if you're missing pieces of it, it'll just disappear from the track. So that's exactly what's going on when you have phase issues. So you're basically just losing the audio. So based on that, what I want to do is line these up as close as I possibly can. And remember, I did warp out that first one too, so I'm going to take some of these. What I'm also going to do is add one more EQ on there to cut out the kick completely, because I don't want to hear the kick. So I'll line those up after for the phase thing. First I want to get the kick sound away. I want to take away the kick. So you can see this big thump over here is basically the kick. Even over here, you're getting a little bit of it. So if I'm playing this alone, it won't sound like a great snare, but if I play this with the kick, I think it'll sound pretty good. Yeah. So that's good. It's not perfect. I could fix it a little bit. Even if there is some body in it that I don't want, I can boost it or take it away. Because maybe there's some body from the kick that is still in this track, so I could take that out a little bit. It's really up to you at that point. So for this, I could add some reverb as well. Adding a little bit more wet to the snare one actually might make it fit into the mix a little bit better, because when you start adding the wetness of the reverb, it moves it to the back of the mix a little bit and it spreads it out. For that reason, it takes away more of the body, and that's basically where the kick is settled in this sample, where the snare would kind of be more on the edges and you get that reverb kind of high-end sound from it. I don't want too much though. But this is helpful to know. For a lot of people who are creating snares, most of the time you're thinking that you need to create the best snare sound when you're listening to it on its own. But this, I wouldn't consider this a good snare. It sounds like white noise that's distorted. It doesn't sound like a snare, but when you put it together with the kick, it sounds good. You also know it sounds good because it was released on an official song that was released on Ausla. So this is also something to know. If you're creating this same sound, you might not think it's good, but if you take it from a song that you know is popular, you'll immediately think it's good just by judging who released it. So that's also something to know. It's to really judge the sounds based on what you think is good. It's really easy to sample a song. This is the easy thing about sampling. You could sample it and you know somebody's already done it before, so you know it works. If you're creating this from scratch, it's really difficult to know if it works or not. So I think that's the biggest thing of being a music producer. It's understanding those choices. It's knowing this sounds good, this doesn't sound good. And that's just going to be from you actually just doing it, just playing with it and messing around until you get a sound you like. But I think it's good to know that you could have a snare that sounds like this that technically doesn't sound good. I don't think this sounds good. But when you mix it together with something else, you could get this new sound out of it. It sounds more pleasing to the ear. I don't know if you consider this pleasing to the ear, but that's the point. So what I want to do with this is get rid of that little hi-hat at the end. The beginning, I'm going to go to the very beginning of this thing. And I'm going to try to line it up as best as I can with the original to avoid phase issues. You can see that I did stretch out the kick though a little bit, so I possibly can fix that a little bit. So you can see that's that. I'll get it as best as I can. It's pretty good. So you can see right here is where this wave is touching, but this one's not touching. It's because I warped it. So like honestly, this is close enough. If you did it to this point, like that's fine. But if you really want to make it a little better, you could go in there and actually warp it. So you could take the sound and just go by eye, you know. And honestly, if you get this one wave, the whole thing's basically this, everything's like separated by the same ratio if you're just taking that one piece at the end. So if you get this one piece working, the rest of it will pretty much line up anyway. So you can see it's not a huge difference, but it's definitely going to be better than if you didn't do it. If you didn't warp it out, if you didn't line it up and get the phase perfect. I'll turn on my fade. I'll fade it out a little bit. Or a lot. Because it is a different sound. I might... Here's the thing too. I don't have to copy this sound directly. I could create my own version of it. So like, if I don't like that whole like psh, white noise thing, I could create a quick little snare. It kind of sounds like a clap snare kind of thing. This is also something to know. Even if you sample somebody's song, you don't have to keep it the same way they did it. That's simply the way that they did it. If I wanted a quick little snare hit like this, for what I'm doing, this might sound better. So that's also something to know. Just because they did it doesn't mean that's the better way. For example, if this was the thing that was sampled, you might think that this is better. So then you actually stretching it out, you'll be like, oh, this doesn't sound good. It sounds better like the original. So I really want to stress that point, that you don't have to keep things the original way that that person's done it in the past. It's like you can create a new thing from it, and depending how you use it, it could sound just as good or